Hi, Danville. Alan Shields, Chief of Police here. We're 10-8 and in service, which means we're here to make people's lives better. And we do that by safeguarding the lives, rights, and property of everyone we serve. Thank you for joining us tonight. This is a live show. So if you have questions, just go ahead and throw them down in the chat. We actually had a pretty good discussion last week about some of the backups over on Sycamore as it relates to the queuing and the drop off and the pickup at Sycamore Elementary School. So if you want to chat about something, this is the place to do it. You will get action. In fact, the very next day on Thursday, I was out there viewing the queuing line and seeing how that was going. And we've actually got a meeting scheduled for next week with the district, the school, our transportation engineers, and some of the folks from the police department staff. And we're going to work towards resolving that problem. And we've got some good ideas. And frankly, many of those good ideas came from you. We had some good ones. If you want to go back in the chat from last week, you can check that out. But there were 2 or 3 people that sent me very, very good emails that had a lot of good detailed information in on what they would suggest. And that really goes back to the idea that we are the police and we do have specialized training as it relates to law enforcement and traffic safety. We have transportation engineers down the hall. They're very good about doing the engineering side of, pedestrian pathways, vehicular pathways, bikeways, all of that. They're very good at it, but they're not the local expert. You are. And so if you sit in that queuing lane every day, you're probably the best person to give us feedback on what we can do different. So I very, very appreciate the people that took the time to write those emails and send them in. So I do thank you for that. We do have some quick slides we want to put up. We put these up each time. But I do want you to download the FEMA All Hazards Checklist. It is there's a link in the description. You can go direct to that, and it's got all kinds of information. We are highlighting wildfire. If you've been out on any of our trails, you'll see that there's 6-foot weeds out there. So the water is great, but it does provide for a lot of growth. And if you can tell by my voice, it provides for a lot of allergies too. These guides are very, very concise. They're not very long. They're 1 to 2 pages per event type, and they will give you a lot of good information. We'd also ask that you sign up for the community warning system along with our Nixle. We've pushed that quite a bit. There's links for both in the description. And then download the Wildfire Preparedness and Evacuation Guide. And that is the guide that we're actually going over. So that is, we've talked about the have the plan portion. We've gone over ways to prepare your home. We're going to go over how you can stay informed. We're going to talk tonight about knowing your neighbors and an evacuation plan. So there is a lot of good information there. Just download them, check it out, put it in talk with your family about it, put it in a drawer, and then let's enjoy the spring and the summer that we're going to have, because it should be a pretty lively and good time. All right. If you have a question, go ahead and throw it in the chat. I'm working at watching both Facebook and YouTube. And so I can see that. Hey, Vicky, how are you? See that you popped in the chat there. It was good seeing your son the other day too. That was good. And so if you have a question or comment, throw it in the chat, and we will get to it during the show and answer it. All right. We're going to go over the blotter. You can go to communitycrimemap.com. This is where you can get information on crime. We upload several times a day there. You can zoom into your neighborhood, and you can actually get alerts direct to your email. You can also get sexual offender registry information there as well. April 24th through the 30th, a little bit more than average, and I apologize. I'm missing one of the pins here, but I wanted to show you we had 2 collisions out towards Comunidad Sahara that were injury collisions, and then 1 downtown that was an injury collision. That was an auto versus pedestrian. And then we had 2 non-injury collisions. So on the 26th, we had an injury collision on Liverpool in Comunidad. So that's one of those yellow dots out right or out east. And then on the 28th, we had 3 different collisions, unrelated, but a non-injury collision on Silverwood Court. That's the one that's not pictured. A non-injury collision on the 500 block of San Ramon Valley Boulevard. That's just south of downtown. And then we had an injury collision on the 400 block of Harts Avenue. That was an auto versus pedestrian collision where a young child ran out into the roadway. And then on the 30th, we had an injury collision on Blackhawk Road and Comunidad Sahara. So not a great week for collisions, but not horrible either. Just a little bit above average. And then, frankly, on our crime blotter, we're in the same boat. We're a little bit above average on that as well. We're 7 total thefts. So again, we go weeks and weeks without any part 1 violent crimes, and that's your homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. And remember, an aggravated assault is something more than a pushing or shoving match. This is where you, an assault with a deadly weapon, or where you cause an injury that requires suturing, or maybe the victim loses consciousness, those sort of things. So it's a violent attack. It's not just a simple battery. We didn't have any burglaries and no vehicle thefts. On the 24th, and let me say this. I'll say that most of what we're seeing are people targeting cars right now. We're getting that week after week after week, and we're seeing it in our Tri-Valley area as well. Our partners are reporting the same thing. Some of them appear to be linked. But if you look, a lot of it is things that are left in the car where it's visible. Sometimes people will try to put it on the floorboard. I know if you drive an SUV, there's not really a trunk in there. And so we're seeing things that are people are trying to stuff it under the floorboard, or maybe they're putting a coat over it. None of that works. If it looks like there's property there, especially if it looks like you're hiding it, then it's probably got value and they're going to want to steal it. And you should be able to leave your backpack, like I carry my backpack with me everywhere. You should be able to leave it right on the hood of your car and it'd be there when you get back. But the reality is, and what I'm telling you is, there are people out there right now that are specifically targeting places where cars are. We see them in neighborhoods where there's more cars on the street, so more of our condo style neighborhoods. We're seeing them at our parks, Hatmiggy and Osage. So let's take a look at the crime for the week. So on the 24th, there were a theft from a locked vehicle in the parking lot of Osage, and you'll see that gets repeated later on. On the 26th, there were 2 vehicles that were broken into at Hatmiggy Park. Both of them were locked, and so they had their windows shattered and their property taken. On the 27th, this is the one I'm going to ask for your help on. I've got a couple of photos I'd like to show you, but there were theft of meats from Smart and Final. And, usually we don't release the property that was taken, but you'll see the property in the picture. On the 29th, we had a few different thefts. So we had a theft of property from an unlocked vehicle on Verde Mesa Drive, and then another one on Falcon Street, and then a third locked vehicle was broken into in the parking lot of Osage Park. And so we are seeing them in our park. So really, if I'm given one call to action, it's please don't leave anything inside of your car. And I know it's real easy. We're going in for a Little League baseball game, or we're going to walk the dog. We've got our backpack with us. I don't like carrying my backpack into the dog park when I'm with my dog. It's a little silly, but I also just don't want my property to be stolen. I don't think I can explain why the Chief's iPad got stolen. So I don't do that. All right, here's where I need your help. If you can identify either of these 2 people, they're the ones that grabbed a bunch of meat, walked out of the store. This was from the Smart and Final on April 27th, 2023 at about 2:24 in the afternoon. If you look, one of them on the right is wearing a Raiders beanie, and he's got a Nike shirt and some pretty colorful shoes with his blue jeans and white shirt. His partner to the left appears to have a unique hairstyle. He's wearing a white shirt, blue jeans, white shoes, and he's got something over his shoulder. And from the video, I couldn't really tell what it was, but if he's wearing something there, it might be something he wears all the time, which might be unique and might be cause for you to know who that person is. So if you know who they are, again, we don't put these photos up to shame anybody. We don't try to have this comment thread going. What I would prefer that you do is simply send us a private or direct message. You can also just send me an email, or you can call us on the phone direct. So any of those will do. So Helena Cox in the comments says, I sent you an email last week, just FYI. Helena, that email was fantastic. Helena very clearly laid out what it is we can look for to improve the traffic safety. So Helena, thank you very much for the email. And then Vicky, I'm assuming this is about the theft. Yes, they will break into your car just to steal the sunglasses in your center console. I'll say this, Danville, you do very good about not leaving stuff in. We used to actually we had an If I Were a Thief campaign where I would send officers and volunteers out, and I would send them to the parking lots. And this is when we were getting hit a lot in the livery and the Rose Garden. And they would go to every car and they would leave a little note on there. And what they would do is they'd fold it up and we'd leave it on every single car because we didn't want to target one specific vehicle. But what it would say is, if you open it up, it would be one of two boxes checked. Either if I were a thief, I would have seen nothing and you did a great job and I wouldn't have broken into your car. Or if I were a thief, I would have seen something in your center console, or we'd write what we saw and we would have broken into your car and taken your stuff. And it was just a way to kind of raise awareness, like, hey, you know, it's that easy to see something and break into the car. And what I'm happy to say is when we first used to do that, we'd get about 50% of the cars in a parking lot that would have something of value visible. And as we did it over and over again, it became fewer and fewer and fewer. And I think that has really helped decrease our total crime. Because if you think about it, we had 2 cars broken into at Hat McGee. I'm sure if there were more to break into, they would have broken into more. There was only 1 car on 2 different days, 1 car broken into at Osage. There's lots of cars at Osage. And not only that, they're not just in the parking lot. They're wrapped around going to Orange Blossom. I mean, there's a lot of parking at Little League. And so if there were more cars with things to steal, I'm very confident that they would have done that. So kudos to everyone that hides their stuff. Good job. All right. So let's go on. So this is going to be our week 3 for emergency prep. I'm going to fly through these a little bit. What I'll encourage you to do, because I did put a lot of information, do one of 2 things. Download the guide or press pause and you can view it on the screen. But I wanted to include the words in here because I wanted you really to see what it is that you can do. So the first one is know your neighbors. And the reason this is important is it gets you to understand some of the needs that they may have, or if you've got special needs, how you can leverage some of your neighbors to help you in these crises. It also lets you, and if you're watching the show, you can be one of the ambassadors that lets everyone know what a defensible space is. Also, if you're trapped in a fire, where is a safety zone that we can all go to in our community and get help? So access and functional needs, what is that? These are people that may require assistance if they need to evacuate. And some examples would be physical development, people with intellectual disabilities, chronic injuries, people with limited English proficiency, or older folks here in town, and maybe people that lack transportation, or even pregnant women. All right, let's go over some quick evacuation tips. I'm going to have another segment where I talk about the site that we use. We're going to cover a pretty in depth about notifications and one of the sites that we use to manage evacuation warnings, evacuation orders, and then the information when we tell you that it's safe to come back home. That'll be on another one, but I'm going to talk about like what you should be looking for. So, this is something where you really need to take stock of your specific situation. And what I would say is err on the side of leaving early. Certainly if you live in an area where there's one way in, one way out, up some of our beautiful West Side streets, some of the neighborhoods on Communitas where it may be a little bit more difficult to get in and out, you might want to consider leaving earlier. If you have special needs that need to be met, you might want to leave earlier and make sure you have your go bag, your documents, make sure you button up your house, set your alarm, do those things. As with the evacuation and when we reintegrate you to the community, you're really going to want to look for the down power lines and avoid those. And we talked about this at the last one, but if you can, you really want to text information out. You want to avoid calling because there's going to be a lot of information going over those lines and you may not get a signal. You may get booted off. And so if you can get a text out, you want to get that out. And that's how you can do your notification. What happens if you're trapped though? What do you do if your primary egress route is blocked, your secondary is blocked? What do you do if you need to hunker down? If you're in a car, park away from vegetation, close the windows and the vents. You want to put the air on recirculate. I know that's not on here. If you're in a Tesla, you can use their biodefense mode. That will help to keep the inside air breathable. If you're on foot, you want to look for a safe building, swimming pool. If you're in home, fill tubs with water, submerge in place, use wet towels, use home fire extinguisher for small fires, no fire, larger than a trash can. But really, we really want to avoid this. This is why we say if if we're in an evacuation warning, that might be the sign to go. You have to take stock. That's what you have to evaluate. But you might want to consider going at that point and not waiting for the evacuation order. Because if there's an evacuation order, you can guarantee there's going to be a lot of people trying to go through a pretty narrow pathway. We do have traffic counts on our streets, and so we can estimate what the traffic flow is going to be, and we can put people at certain locations. But it's going to be pretty incredible to manage because we're going to have a few different roles. One, we're going to have to assist fire to make sure that they have clear paths to do what they do best, which is fight that fire. We want to make sure that they're not encumbered with anything else other than fighting the fire. So we are in a complete support role for them. We're also going to be doing evacuation notices. We're going to be controlling those intersection points where we're going to want to free up the traffic so that everybody can go. But one of the roles that people forget about is we're going to make sure people aren't breaking into your homes too, right? We're going to want to have security elements. And that's where we might ask for mutual aid. And if you remember a couple of years back, Lieutenant Grassi and I both went out to Vacaville. And that's what we did, was we led teams that our sole purpose was to protect those evacuation areas from looters, to make sure that looters didn't come in. So that's going to be something that we're going to be doing. So we're going to have a lot of roles that we're playing there. All right, let's look at some tips when we are returning home. So what are we doing when we return home? Again, we're going to give you directions. We will let you know when it's safe to return home. If there are specific ingress routes, ways that we want you to go, we'll let you know. A lot of times what you may see, and this is a little new for people, we're not used to this, but you may see a checkpoint, right? And what we'll do, because it's easier for us to limit access for people coming in that only live there versus trying to go around and find the looters, right? So when we're returning people home, we might have a checkpoint and you'd be asked to show ID. This is why in your go bag or with your wallet, you really want to have things prepared. And when we talk about building a go bag, what you'll hear me say is I actually have two. I have a go bag that are my long-term supplies. It's basically a bag I can leave in my closet, never have to touch. And if I need to take it, I can just grab it and go. And frankly, the other one is the backpack that if you're down at Lunardi's, you'll see me walking through the store with my backpack on. It is that backpack because I've got ID in there. I've got my charger. I've got my phones. I've got my iPad in there. I've got everything that I need to function should I have to leave in a hurry. And it is, it's how I work. So if you're returning home, you're going to want to have that ID and be able to show that ID so that you can get in. Here's the big one, and nobody really plans for this, is expect for and prepare for disruptions to daily activities. You may return home, but there may not be power. There may not be water yet. I can tell you that PG&E, from my observations, does an incredible job. I mean, if you've ever looked at their staging areas and their command post, when they're working hard to, put the power lines up and the poles and get everything re-energized, it is an incredible feat. And I frankly didn't know they had that many employees. I mean, they've got an incredible amount of employees and they do a phenomenal job. It's going to be disrupted. And this is where having your home supplies is important. And we'll talk about that again in a later episode because I do want to go into some detail on that. But you have to prepare your home so that when you come back, that you and your family can survive, or you just have to plan on being away longer. And are you prepared to do that? All right. So again, on the evacuation tips of when you're going back into and you're welcome back in your neighborhood, avoid the down power lines. Walk the perimeter, and I'll talk about that one in a little more detail on camera. When in doubt, throw it out. So food and drinks in the fridge and freezer, if they've been off, if your power has been off, and what we saw County Health recommend, if your power is off for like 6 hours, that food is probably going to be bad. That is a general guideline that they use. But the bottom line is, when in doubt, throw it out. It's not worth getting sick. It's better to have dry food storage and supplies that you can use for several weeks and maybe even a month after an event. All right, the other was walk the perimeter. So I want to talk about this. If it is it could be a fire. I know we're focusing on fire, but it could be an earthquake with fire. There could be a disaster that's not just one event, but it's multiple events. And the typical one we think of here is the earthquake and the fire. So if you're coming back to your home, you really want to walk the perimeter. You may look at your front door, everything may be fine. Believe it or not, there could be a tree that fell into the back of your home and you wouldn't know it, right? You may not know it based on the design of your house. But walk the outside of the house. You're looking for cracks in the structure. You're looking for damage to the house that would indicate there's a problem. You're looking for if you've got exposed power. So a lot of our homes have the exposed power lines that kind of go into a pipe and then into the house. You're looking to see if that's severed. If that's severed or laying on the ground, you don't want to go anywhere near that. Call PG&E. They'll get out and fix it. But you really want to make sure that you do that survey of the outside of your house. And then as you go into the house, and we recommend that the adults do this, do a thorough walk through your house, really inspect your home, just look at it for any damage or anything that might make it so that it's not livable. Clearly, if you're hearing hissing noises from pipes, that's a bad sign. If you smell the sour egg smell, that's usually a sign of gas. So you really want to be careful on going into the house. That's it. What I have for that. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. We're going to go over communications, and that's going to be the most important one. We'll go over that next week. Then we're going to go over preparing your home and a go bag, and we'll go over that the following week. But I really want to make sure that we go into detail on those. And then on the final week, we're going to cover the evacuation in a little bit more detail, because I want to make sure that we cover the site that we use to post our evacuation warnings, so you can get real-time updates that you go out and see on whether or not we have evacuation warnings in place or orders, or if we're welcoming people back to their homes. All right, I'm gonna check the chat and see if there's anything else. I don't see anything else. I don't see anything on YouTube. So I do appreciate you all for joining us tonight. I do want to cover our couple of things here. Go over and download the FEMA All Hazards Checklist. This will allow you to be prepared should there be a disaster. It's just those infrequent but very hazardous events. We also want you to download our wildfire guide. We are in the middle of that season right now. So please download that. And then if you haven't, please sign up for the community warning system. This is how you can get alerts to your cell phone, your home phone, your email, your text message, all of that. It is how we alert the public in very major disasters. And then also make sure you sign up for Nixle. Okay, so with that, it looks like we're done. So we're 10:10, which means we're off duty, but we're always 10:8 and in service to all of you. Thank you, Danville. Have a good night.